Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Brenda Foster. I'm chair of the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. And for those who have not attended our programs before, this is one in a series of programs that HPEC is doing together with the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism from the state of Hawaii, the Small Business, I think it's called the Small Business SBDC, Small Business Development Center, Joe, if I'm not mistaken. And it's all been funded by a grant through SBA, the Small Business Administration for the U.S. government. Today's program will be on Canada, but before we begin the program today, I'd like to call on Jamie Lum from DBED to give you a little bit of an introduction on the types of programs and things we've been working on. Jamie.
Aloha and good morning, everyone. I'm Jamie Lum, and I'm with DBED. And as Brenda mentioned, through a partnership that we have with HPEC and SBDC and other organizations, this is a series, part of a series of what we call export readiness training seminars. It's all part of our High Step program, which is the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program. As Brenda mentioned, it is funded by a grant from the SBA, and the whole intent of the program nationwide is to get see an increase in U.S. exports. So for Hawaii, we are trying to encourage companies that have never exported before to look at exporting as a way to expand their business, and for companies that are already exporting, look at ways to increase into other markets or increase market share and so forth. This is one component of the High Step program, which is training. We try to introduce, with HPEC's help, topics on either markets or particular areas of exporting that are of interest to our Hawaii companies. We have a few more, two or three more in our series. But if you go to our website, which is invest.hawaii.gov, under the exporting tab, it will give you the whole background on High Step. It has all of the rest of the seminars that are scheduled for the rest of the grant period, which ends in September. So as I said, this is one component. Another component that we have are Hawaii Pavilions, which DBED organizes under the Hawaii banner, where we will purchase booth space in selected trade shows, and then we go out and we recruit Hawaii companies to participate all together into this show. So we have one coming up just next week, which is the biotech annual international convention. Probably one of the largest shows that we do is the Tokyo International Gift Show, which is coming up in September. Probably several of you out that are here today are participating, and actually that's going to be our next seminar that comes up on the 28th of this month, where we're going to be doing getting ready for trade shows in Japan, but in particular focusing on the Tokyo Gift Show. So again, Hawaii Pavilions is another component of our High Step program. The last component is our financial assistance program, which for this year we've actually already distributed the funds, but there are some funds that are made available. It's on a competitive basis where companies can come in and submit an application with an export plan, and these applications get evaluated and selected for funding, so that you can do things outside of maybe some of the trade shows that DBED's doing, or there are other areas that you want to pursue through your export plan. So financial assistance is the third component. So as I said, our grant period ends at the end of September, so we're kind of winding down. We have put in an application for fiscal year 18 and hope to find out probably it won't be until August or September when we'll find out if we will get funding for next year. But again, please go to our website if you have any questions, invest.hawaii.gov under exporting. And my contact information is on there as well, or if you want to see me, I can give you my card if you have any other questions. But thank you very much for being here. Aloha.
Thank you very much, Jamie. In addition, we have not only those of you who are attending the seminar here in the room, we are live streaming the program. So we do have an audience online. And for those of you who might want to go back and visit some of the seminars we've already conducted, they are being all the seminars are being videotaped, and they are on not only DBED's website, but it's also on HPEC's website and the website of our partners. So you can go to any of those websites, and we have a list of those for you. You can go back and revisit those seminars. With that, the program today, many of you are used to seeing Rob Hack here, who's been HPEC board member and director, and he has also been running these programs for us. Well, Rob is with us today, but he is actually, I don't know, Robert, I don't know if you're still in Michigan or where you are, but he, excuse me.
I'm just a few miles from Canada.
A few miles from Canada. So we're going to open our program with Rob giving a few remarks, followed by Tom Hansen, who is the Principal Commercial Officer for the U.S. Commercial Service, and he's based in Calgary, Alberta. He has extensive experience, both in the private sector as well as with the U.S. Foreign Commercial Service on working with companies. And then we will have Peter Stamps here from UPS, who will talk with us a bit about the logistics and the shipping for exports to Canada. So with that, I'd now like to open it up to Rob to make a few remarks. Rob?
Aloha, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much, Brenda. Thank you, Amy, as well. And thanks to Tom Hansen from joining from Calgary. You'll hear from him in just a minute. I wanted to also say thank you to Blake, who's filling in there and running the webinar. As Brenda mentioned, we are recording these, and they'll be up on the HPEC YouTube channel within about a week after we do some video editing and what have you. Another quick comment, I'd like to do our standard disclaimer and say, please wait until the end of presenters' speeches to ask questions, and then feel free to ask any question you want. However, please understand that as we are taping these, your questions are public and they will be part of the video record. But we don't want to dissuade you from asking questions. Please do that. When you do ask a question, please speak loudly and clearly so that Tom or Peter Stamps can hear the question, but also so that the online audience and the videotape picks up the question. As I mentioned, I'm in Detroit for about 10 days, and I'll be going across the border to Canada next week. Just one quick comment on that. I'll cross over what is the Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Ontario. There's a town over there called Windsor. And across that bridge every year is more trade than between all of the United States and Japan in any given year. So I wanted to make it clear to the audience that Canada is an extremely important partner for U.S. trade and also for Hawaii trade. That when at HPEC and in my own personal consulting business, I often get requests about how do we from Hawaii export to Japan and China and Singapore and India and places like this. But I feel like Hawaii companies are ignoring Canada to their peril, and that we need to spend much more time in Hawaii thinking about Canada. We get a lot of Canadian tourists, and as Tom will explain later, it's a lot easier as an export market to sell and market in Canada as well as ship to Canada from Hawaii than it is in some of these other markets. So I just think that it's something that we in Hawaii ignore a bit, and we need to double down on our efforts and what's going on in Canada. I would also add that in doing some research for this seminar today and getting prepared for Hawaii-Canada trade, I ran across an event that's coming up in July, which is more focused on agricultural products, but not necessarily entirely agriculture. There's a Canada retail inbound trade mission coming to Hawaii in mid-July, and that's sponsored by WUSADA, which is the Western United States. I don't remember what ATAMI, Agricultural Trade Association. So there will be Canadian buyers coming to Hawaii specifically looking for products to sell to Canada. So please look for that and register for that, and HPEC can help you do whatever is necessary there, as I suppose DBET and the Department of Agriculture in Hawaii can help as well. So that's my quick comment there. I appreciate everybody coming today. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. And with that, I'll turn it back to Brenda, and she can introduce Tom Hansen, who's in Calgary.
Rob, thank you very much. You are missed, but I'm delighted you're joining us, at least via video. Thank you so very, very much. I'd now like to introduce to you Tom Hansen. As I said, Tom is the Principal Commercial Officer for the U.S. Commercial Service. He's based in Calgary, Alberta. As I understand it, Tom and his team do a lot of promotion both in energy, mining, agricultural systems, and environmental technologies. And also, I think what's important to note is before Tom joined the commercial service, he was in the private sector, and he was based in San Diego. And he was a specialist both in multi-tier global distribution channels and in global product launches, as I understand it, of both consumer and business-to-business solutions. But also for the Hawaii audience, he's also in that capacity, I believe, had a client from Molokai, if I'm not mistaken, Tom, so was very familiar with Hawaii companies, and the types of products that Hawaii companies might want to export. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tom Hansen for his remarks, and then following his remarks, he'll be willing to entertain questions from the audience. So Tom, thank you so very much for joining us. I'm sorry you can't be here in Hawaii, but we're delighted that you're on video. Thank you.
Brenda, thank you very much. Is everyone able to hear and see me?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I can't be in beautiful Honolulu, but as you'll see over my shoulders, I'm in downtown Calgary, the vibrant city in Alberta, the business center of Western Canada. And we happen to have a United States consulate here, as you can imagine, and I'm lucky enough to be the principal commercial officer for trade investment promotions for the United States in all of Western Canada. That goes from the province of Manitoba, kind of in the middle of Canada, out to British Columbia and up to Yukon Territory and Northwest Territories. It's about 11 million square miles, about the size of the European Union, quite a few business centers as well. And as you can imagine, quite a dynamic business center. Brenda alluded to the fact that I come from the private sector based in San Diego, and I also had the privilege of serving on the District Export Council for San Diego and Imperial Valley before I left to join the government. So I know the value, the immeasurable value that DEC offers communities throughout the United States. And as she mentioned, I got to have got the chance to work with a Molokai-based purveyor of quality sea salts, in fact, who has channel traction in the gourmet foods as well as in the natural personal care products. And I know that that's a big part of what comes out of the islands, and so we can talk a little bit about that. I took a quick look at who's in the audience there and the kinds of things you're doing. Few people touch on those sectors, but I'll speak in general. What I'll do first is to talk about what the commercial service does around the world, and then I'll give you some guidelines to think about as you're entering your consumer goods market strategy for Canada nationwide. And finally, I'll close with a few thoughts on, based on my experience there in Hawaii. First of all, the United States Foreign Commercial Service operates in consulates and embassies around the world, Calgary being one of them. I've got 3 counter offices in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. And as you probably already know, my fine colleague John Holman there in Honolulu operates the Export Assistance Center. And basically every U.S. city has an Export Assistance Center like that. And so John is there to help you with really market strategies for the whole world, not just for Canada. So generally what we do, and as what you might have already heard through your affiliation with DEC and talking to John, if you've had the pleasure to meet him, we're all about matchmaking and setting up best channel strategies for companies of all kinds from the United States, any industry sector, products, services, you name it. So we're here to make sure that you meet the best possible channel partners, that is partners who are wholesale, retail partners or strategic alliances that you could possibly have in Canada countrywide. And not just the sectors that you're working in, as I said, but all of them. So we're all about forming delegations of buyers from Canada to go to the United States to specialist sector shows. And we're also organizing inbound missions for companies coming from the States into Canada. And that might be either to a specific sector show, or it might be specifically to come in and set up meetings with prospective partners. So we basically carry America's sales bag for all exports possible in this wonderful country. I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you'd encounter in what is arguably the most friendly country in the world in which to do business for United States companies. But be mindful that things like customs documentation, bilingual labeling, big one, first of all, packaging requirements which are affected by bilingual labeling, and then the federal and provincial sales tax structures. Being mindful that each of the provinces in Canada, there are 13, have their own specific tax strategies. If you happen to be in the line of work where you're pursuing government contracts, know that you have to go through a fairly formalized procurement registration process should you be selling into the defense or the security sector. Overall, as with any market, you've really got to be mindful of the fact that this is an extremely advanced, highly discriminatory product sector market. That is, American consumers and Canadian consumers share much of the same outlook on things. Just have to be able to differentiate yourself from your competitors when it comes to pricing strategies, how you enter the market, what it is that you say and that makes you better. And I'll talk a little bit about that amazing Hawaii brand cachet that you have working in your favor. Along those lines, there are opportunities. There are travel and tourism related and recreational travel related sector growth opportunities. And a lot of times consumer goods fall into sort of a sideline to that sector as well. And here again is where Hawaii really excels. In terms of the Canadian economy, you might know that the price of oil kind of drives a lot of what the consumers can do and how they discern how to spend. In the last couple of years, the price per barrel of oil has dropped significantly, which has had a pretty dramatic impact on Canadian households and on small businesses. But be mindful that there are still opportunities. And then and speaking of energy, if any of you happen to be in the energy sector, please call me. But basically, we see things like renewable energy and related technologies really come into their own in Canada, apart from the consumer goods sector. Just be mindful that, in order to make your partnerships work, you really have to be here. You've got to know who it is that you decide you want to work with and understand the sector. So I have, as I mentioned, I have 3 counterpart offices throughout Canada, but really keep in mind the fact that John Holman and the team at the Honolulu office are your first best point of contact, not only for Canada, but also for any market in which you decide to enter. So let me talk a little bit about the consumer goods sector. In Canada, it's a highly saturated, very competitive market, much the same as the United States. Most every international company is present. Retailers are shifting their strategy to e-commerce, so you have to be mindful of that as well as you set up your structures for channel margins, for instance. I mentioned the low oil prices, and there's a relatively weak Canadian dollar versus the US dollar right now, which might put a bit of a crimp on some household budgets and the budgets of small businesses when they're procuring US products. But be mindful that rising employment rates are a sign that consumer goods, discretionary spending on consumer goods is going to be rising. Household debt in Canada is also higher than it's ever been, and that might pose a risk to future spending. And then another kind of obstacle or condition is that the labeling laws are different from the United States. As you probably have heard by now, you must have bilingual labeling in French for the province of Quebec. And if you have any sort of government or public sector product or solution or service, you have to be bilingual. High-end luxury retail kind of takes the cake as far as the subsector for the best consumer goods sector and market. It's low in comparison to a lot of the retail sectors, but there's very, very, very good potential. So it kind of depends on how you're positioning your product. The fashion sector is quite appealing to Canadian consumers, and you might know a little bit about the population here. There's an awful large population of Asians who have migrated to Canada, to the main metropolitan areas, including Calgary. From all countries in Asia. So that kind of brings with it an association of what they might be looking for. I mentioned e-commerce earlier. Be mindful that as you enter into the market, you might end up approaching your prospective partner and or your end user with an e-commerce strategy. There are, let me see, e-commerce accounts for 42% of clothing purchases, 29% of household goods, and 32% of electronics purchases. And not only consumers, but SMEs, small and mid-sized enterprises, are shifting rapidly to the internet. And again, with the recovery of oil prices and the employment rates, luxury goods sales should increase steadily over the next 5 years. So it spells opportunity for you. Basically, the strongest subsectors, in the consumer goods are toys, sporting goods, garden and pet goods. And then there's some other specialty consumer goods as well. Canadians who purchase clothing and equipment from the subsector are less price sensitive, but paying quite close attention to detail, to quality, to reputation of the brand as well. So really be focusing on multiple selling points as you establish your wholesale relationships, including material policy, warranty, design, and pricing. The Commerce Department, through our Honolulu office, has links to the Consumer Packaging and Labeling Act for the Government of Canada. And specifically, if you market food, there are also specific food labeling standards that the Government of Canada publishes as well. So be mindful that those are available. So let me close with some observations on what I see as opportunities for Hawaii-based providers of goods and services. And this runs the gamut from industrial to consumer, from goods to services. Really be mindful of a few things. Be mindful that you must, if you're going to make the claim, you must be authentically island sourced. You must be able to confidently state to your channel partners and your consumers that yes, indeed, you can stake claim to the made in Hawaii quality. And along the lines of that, you must have absolutely impeccable quality. It's a highly competitive market, whatever it is that you're selling. And so I know that in the state of Hawaii, there isn't a huge manufacturing base. And as a result, there's not a huge subsector for fulfillment and packaging and those kinds of things. I know it's common, and based on my previous private sector experience, to go offshore, whether it's to the mainland or to another country, to package your goods and to label your goods and then to transit them to the final market. Now, here's where you have to pay special attention to ensuring the quality of those partners who you're entrusting with your products. So be really, really careful that your brand cachet will survive any kind of offshore mainland fulfillment or distribution or packaging arrangement. So what's the cachet? In my mind, the cachet for the state of Hawaii trumps so many other cachets around the world, and you're lucky for that. It's about health. It's about the aloha spirit. It's about the island soul, if you will. You've heard it all, more than I. And really, in the case of Canada, if you're marketing products to Canadians, Hawaii is not cold. So if you go into any kind of brand imaging, people who travel there for vacation or who have not traveled there but imagine it think, man, that place is not cold, so I'm happy to use and buy their products. I mentioned about trusting your partners. Really know your distributors quite well. As you head into the market, come frequently to meet them, go to trade shows, rely upon partners like UPS and other partners who really kind of have a good handle on who operates in which sectors. Although it might seem daunting, the world gets pretty small all of a sudden when you start to seek out specialized wholesale partners and specialized retail partners, agents, brokers, distributors. So thankfully, it gets to be a pretty small world. But don't be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of offerings. Just go to those trade shows that where most of your buyers, decision makers, or prospective partners are going. And then, as Brenda mentioned at the top of the presentation, and as Rob alluded to, the state has some really tremendous federal and local resources, such as the Small Business Administration funded program, such as WUSADA, the Western U.S. Agriculture Trade Association, which is basically the best resource that I can think of for marketing foods. A point of detail, the Commerce Department with which I work and with which John works, if you're selling a food or a beverage, technically the Foreign Agriculture Service of the United States would assist you, not the Foreign Commercial Service. The goods and services that we typically work on are manufactured in nature. So that's a point of detail that I wouldn't worry terribly much about right now because, as I said, the state has such great resources. So there's this Hawaii seal of quality that you can get from WUSADA, for instance, and there's other kind of pedigrees, if you will, that you could rely upon for the market. So really, in closing, I want you to be mindful that you've got a nice big safety net there in the state. It's got a diverse group of products. I know that not a lot of manufacturing and fulfillment takes place there, but there are solutions either on the mainland or in other countries so that you can safely and competently reach your market. So I appreciate the work that DEC is doing, that the Export Assistance Center office there is doing, and we in Canada will await your arrival with your products and your solutions, and it would be our pleasure to work with you from west to east for whatever you have in mind for our market. So I'll close my remarks there and stand by for any comments or questions any of you have.
Tom, and thank you so very, very much for that excellent advice and for your comments. I'd now like to open it up to questions from people in the audience or anybody online who's on the live stream who might want to ask a question. Are there any questions from people in the audience? Yes, Byron.
You mentioned that e-commerce is growing. Are the bilingual labeling requirements just as stringent if you're selling via e-commerce versus on a store shelf?
Did you hear that, Tom? The question
I
is,
did. Thank you. Absolutely, Byron. There's no exceptions made whether you're selling through brick and mortar or through e-commerce. It's federal regulations about packaging that trump everything else, whether it's a consumer or an industrial good.
Okay. Let me follow up a bit on that, Tom. On the bilingual packaging, would it be best to have translators or have that done in Canada versus the United States, and to utilize the assistance of your office in trying to find those people?
I think you could probably find qualified translators as part of your fulfillment strategy. As you start to design your retail packaging, if in fact you have a retail product, be mindful of needing the space, so to speak, and study it very carefully. I think there are advisors in pretty much every state in the union, including Hawaii, who could steer you in the right direction so that you'd be fully compliant in the nation of Canada. As far as translators go, obviously you could go to Quebec for the source, for the penultimate expert on Canadian French, by the way, not the same as French or French from Africa.
Right.
But I'm confident that there are world-class translators in all of the major cities around the world, including Honolulu, who could probably deliver what you need quite satisfactorily.
Thank you. Let me ask Jamie at DBID. Jamie, do you folks keep a list of translators that can help companies translate, their labeling or anything for their products?
No, we don't.
You don't have that. Are you familiar where we might have that in the state? I know in the past the UH had a bank of translators, but I think Tom made an excellent point, which was the French. It has to be Canadian French, not French or African French or whatever. Rob, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I know a service in Honolulu that has French Canadians that do translation just for that.
Okay, thank you. So we could have that as a resource listed here at HPEC?
Sure.
For companies? Okay.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
DBED could have if needed. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes.
As it relates to the Canadian FDA, is a process of getting a pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, biotech product into that country very difficult? And what would that process look like, and how do we take the first step towards that?
Tom, did you hear
Can you
that?
can you paraphrase, please?
Yes. Their question is, they have a it's not a pharmaceutical, it's a nutrapharmaceutical product, and they wanted to know what the restrictions were, or how restrictive they were in being able to bring those into Canada.
Yes, expect a standard that's very similar to the FDA in terms of what you need to do for clearance, for regulation, for inspection, and everything else, whether it's a nutraceutical, a pharmaceutical, whether it's for human or animal consumption, it all varies. And again, the Commerce Service in Canada through our Honolulu office has some pretty specific guidelines to get you started. And I encourage you to make sure that you have all that in hand as you go through product development and testing, just to make sure that you're accounting for all costs and timelines that'll be required for your company before you can confidently sell in the product in the market.
Do you know generally what that timeline might look like?
I can't say. It's going to depend on the subsector. It's going to depend on whether it's drug or nutraceutical or animal or human. I think I defer to the people at the company who are probably more experienced than I in developing timelines for how long it'll take for them to commercialize their product. It really depends.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Do we have any questions online, Blake?
None so far.
This is Rob. I have a question. Tom, a lot of the companies in Hawaii, as you alluded to earlier, are selling natural products or organic products, creams and soaps and shampoos and even pet food and things like this. I assume that there's a market, a growing market for such in Canada, but we tend to think of Canada as being sort of a homogeneous market, which it isn't. And where you are in Calgary is a lot like Denver or Albuquerque or something like that, compared to
Like Houston.
Toronto, which is a lot more like, Chicago or New York or something like that. And then, of course, you have Vancouver, which might be a lot more like San Francisco. So my question is there, in your experience, is there an area, geography, where our Hawaii company should focus first and foremost? I know that's kind of a difficult question, but Canada is such an enormous geography, right? Like it's the United States or Russia or China. It just seems like maybe our companies, depending on what their product is, they should think about one market, one city, one province first, and then see how that goes.
Good point, Rob. Based on my previous experience, and yes, the country is vast, I tend towards the western cities. And this is because, practically speaking, a lot of Quebecers or people who live in the eastern provinces simply have not spent as much time or had as much exposure to the Hawaiian experience. The other factor that I think is important, as you raised, is that Vancouver, for instance, is extremely cosmopolitan. And if you're developing marketing strategies right now at your company, for instance, for Hong Kong, or for the main cities in China, if you happen to be selling there now, keep that in mind as you start to enter the Vancouver market, because as you might know, there's a tremendous diaspora of Chinese who've migrated to British Columbia. And then in the middle cities, as Rob alluded, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Regina in Saskatchewan, those are much more like the prairie cities in the United States, Denver, Houston, Chicago. The makeup of the people, their culture, their familial ties, their heritage, how they earn their living, the kind of land they live on are so very similar. And then you get into Toronto, which is the big kahuna for Canada as far as population center, as far as it being the absolute center of the Canadian commercial engine for manufacturing and finance. And again, Toronto is much more like London in terms of the vast variety of people who live there, who call it home and who make a living there. So keep a global eye as you start to prioritize your markets. But really, it's going to depend on what you're selling and what your expertise is. If it's a lifestyle choice that you're asking a consumer to make, odds are you might find some affinity in the Vancouver, Toronto areas. But if it's an industrial solution, obviously you're open to wherever you find your center to be in Canada.
Do you have any idea if the Vancouver Chinese population, if they, how fluent are they in written and spoken Chinese dialects? And is it mostly Cantonese or Mandarin? Do you have any idea about that?
Extremely fluent. I can't tell you exactly the dominant dialect, but you can assume that their entire communities in the metro area of Vancouver who retain their strong heritage ties and most likely conduct business and education and social outings in their native language. So it is practically a transplant situation in Vancouver.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, thank you so very, very much. Blake, any more live streaming questions?
No questions.
Any more questions from the audience in the room? Well, I can't thank you enough, Tom. I mean, that was just absolutely excellent.
Wonderful.
And please feel free to continue to join us, but if you do have to get back to work, we understand.
I appreciate the invitation. What a wonderful coincidence that came up, and I'm so thankful to have joined you all. Thank you, and I will disconnect now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Aloha.
Bye. Aloha.
I'd now like to call on one of our HPEC directors, Peter Stams, who's an account executive at UPS, to talk with you about the logistics of actually shipping your product to Canada. Peter.
Good morning. So a little bit about me before we jump into UPS capabilities when shipping to Canada to help you folks explore new markets. I've been with UPS for 10 years now. I was actually born and raised in Hawaii and had the privilege of starting with UPS in the Northwest in Portland, Oregon. And I've dealt with a variety of industries, from high tech to automotive to industrial manufacturing. I work with the government here in Hawaii, worked with the military here in Hawaii. And so I have a pretty extensive background as to helping shippers such as yourselves explore international markets and further expand your domestic ties with your shipping needs and capabilities. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into the first slide here. So what I really specialize in is on the small parcel side of the business. So what that really means is that's your 1 to 150 pound individual boxes that are non-palletized, that are in cardboard boxes. I work with a number of partners here locally. If you do have ocean needs for container movements or partial container movements, freight needs for your trucking needs across the 48 states or locally, as well as domestic and international air freight, which is a palletized movement. That's typically when you move larger volumes of commodities. Just quickly, if any of you need to take off early and you do have some questions, I don't mind if you raise your hand and you want me to answer that question before you take off, so just let me know. Canada is a significant opportunity. When I work with clients here locally, and I've worked with them on the mainland, and they're looking to expand their markets beyond our borders, Canada is a very lucrative market for you. Reason being is there are partners to the north. If you're in the 48 states, they're very close to us. They're the largest U.S. trading partner with more than $2 billion in U.S. goods and services daily. They have a gross domestic product of over $1.5 trillion. A diverse range of industries. UPS has poured in a considerable amount of market research to further understand the major industries in Canada and what consumers are looking for as a buying experience in Canada. Surprisingly, consumers want a different buying experience depending on the country you're trying to get into. And we'll get into a little more to that buying experience that Canadians are looking for on some other slides. But again, some of the diverse range of Canadian industries that are very prominent in their economy are the automotive industry, aerospace, mining, and renewable energy. And then, of course, we do have the North American Free Trade Agreement, which many of us are familiar with. The goal of the North American Free Trade Agreement, again, is between Mexico, the U.S., United States of America, and Canada. And it's to eliminate tariffs, also known as taxes, on goods importing and exporting out of those countries, which gives you a competitive advantage to compete with other Canadian businesses if you're not having to have those taxes take away any of your margins or profitability on the products you're trying to sell. One thing you need to keep in mind to take advantage of NAFTA and minimizing or eliminating those tariffs is you need to have a certificate of origin for your product, because you need to prove that it originated or was manufactured in one of those 3 countries that is in that free trade agreement. The manufacturer of that product can provide you a certificate of origin for proof that it was manufactured in one of those 3 countries. A couple of statistics here, and again, in relation to Canada. Canada is the largest importer of U.S. goods at over $312 billion, and that was just in 2014, so obviously it's considerably gone up since then. 65% of the $482 billion in total imports come from the U.S. 19% of the total U.S. good exports are destined for Canada. They're the 11th largest economy by GDP. They're the 16th best country in the world to do business with, according to the World Bank. So they're very much a trusted partner and somebody we can easily work with that does business very similar to the way that we do business in the U.S. And 90% of the population lives within 100 miles of the U.S. border. And you'll see reasons why we've developed our infrastructure in the way that we have due to that statistic. Moving along to slide 3. Next slide, please. No problem. So what has UPS done to help you folks out? So what are we doing to help encourage you to take your products overseas, specifically in this case in Seminar to Canada? UPS has started the UPS International Welcome Program. We very clearly understand that it is, and it can be a little intimidating to ship internationally. It's not as easy as shipping domestically, but once you've done it a couple times, you can do it blindfolded. It's not hard. We're here to help you through that process, though. We can hold your hand through that process to get you up and running. What I do for my clients here locally is when they're looking to expand overseas or into Canada in this example, I'll sign them up on the UPS International Welcome Program. It's a customized program where you get a designated individual to work with you, including myself as backup. But that individual is strictly there to work with you. They eat, breathe, and sleep international. That's all they do. And so they're really there to answer all your questions that you have, whether it's in relation to regulations, tariffs, licenses that you may need, services available. And again, you have me as backup. And this program is really set in place for the first 12 weeks to get you up and running, give you that confidence to continue to move forward. And then, to be honest with you, they've stuck around a lot longer than 12 weeks if needed. And then you always have me as your backup. I'm a local account manager here based on Oahu. And really with that, it will give you the confidence needed to give you the resources at your fingertips and the knowledge you need to continue to expand internationally. Next slide. So again, as I had mentioned a little earlier, UPS has poured a significant amount of capital into researching foreign markets for your benefit and for obviously our benefit, because if we can get more people to ship internationally, you win and we win. It's a win-win, right? That's what makes the world go round. So UPS Pulse of the Online Shopper is one of our research channels that we utilize to provide additional information and insight to us as a transportation organization, as well as to you, the consumer. And Canadians have many concerns and preferences when online shopping. UPS product portfolio provides solutions for both retailers and consumers. So, as you can see on that top bullet point there, why might a Canadian shopper prefer not to buy online. And 41% is because of the shipping cost, and 23% are because of customs brokerage and duties. The nice thing for you folks and the timing of this seminar is that UPS internally is pushing very hard for us to grow our international business to Canada. In fact, we're doing a lot of internal training on it as we speak, because just like you see, we also see a huge opportunity to continue to grow our business and our lanes and our traffic into Canada by working with you folks. Because of that, in relation to shipping costs, Canada is actually one of the most affordable shipping lanes you can go to internationally with us. It's considerably more affordable than going to Australia or New Zealand, as an example. In addition to that, I can also provide you an agreement, should you be wanting to move forward with shipping to Canada, that provides you discounts, further discounts your transportation costs going into all provinces. We do go to all 13 provinces in Canada. Another thing too is that our brokerage cost is built into our air services that go into Canada, and we'll get into some specific slides that specify the air services that we have into Canada. But as you can see, it is a little bit of a concern there at 23% for online Canadian shoppers. Duties are what they are. That's assessed by their customs. Customs, for obvious reasons, is a revenue generator for a country. But we can work with you as a shipper to help you to calculate a landed cost up front, so that when you ship to a consumer in Canada, there are no surprises for additional collection of funds upon delivery. Canadian consumers don't like that either. They like to know what their costs are up front, and that's a landed cost. Canadian concerns about online purchasing, the next bullet point down. Returns are too expensive. Our return rules are too restrictive. UPS has the most return options out of any other transportation company in the industry. So I can guarantee you that we can give you a return service and options, or a number of options that your consumer base can choose from to accommodate their needs and their capabilities and what they're comfortable with. Again, shipping costs come up again, and other costs that relate to the duties, customs, and brokerage. Picking up at another location came in at 31%, so that's pretty significant. UPS was an industry leader and still is with what we call access points. And access points are retail locations that go through a stringent process of signing up with UPS to become actually a delivery point for our drivers to deliver to. So I'll get into a little more detail on access points on the next slide. Another concern for the Canadian receivers and buyers are not being home for packages, and again, that also relates to access points. So the next slide that we have dives a little further into access points. Again, an access point is a retail location. It could be your local grocery store that will have to go through a stringent process to sign up with UPS. They will scan your package just like a UPS driver does to show that it was delivered to their retail store, and they will sign for receiving your package at that retail or grocery outlet. The real benefit with this is that, again, through a lot of the market research UPS has poured in a lot of capital for, is that, as in a case in point, if you're shipping a high value package to a consumer in Canada and it's going to their house, and like most of us here, we work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that package, if it's high value, is more than likely going to be signature required. If there's nobody there to sign for that package, that means the driver, typically in the past, would take that package back and do 3 delivery attempts, one consecutive day after the next. But what the access point allows to happen is to have the driver then deliver that package to the nearest access point to your address, so that you can, on your way home from work, stop by the grocery store, get some milk or some dinner or whatever it might be, and then pick up your package there as well. The win for you as the shipper is that you're getting your package to your consumer in a more timely manner, and the win for the consumer is that they get the package in hand quicker and don't have to worry about not being home on the next delivery attempt. As you can see, Canada has over 700 access points, and this was actually information from 2015. I do apologize, it's a little dated, but I can tell you it's been so widely popular for us as an organization and for consumers that that number has grown to over 1,000. One of the tools and tracking tools that we can provide you as a shipper is called UPS Quantum View Manage. That Quantum View Manage is what I can pretty much compare to the dashboard of your car, but it's basically your entire supply chain and allows you to track all the packages within your entire supply chain. You will get updates within Quantum View Manage should a package go, instead of to somebody's doorstep, to a UPS access point instead. And the consumer will also be notified of that as well. We've seen through market research that it has immensely increased customer satisfaction because, again, in today's market, everybody wanted everything yesterday, right? So the quicker we can get it to the consumer, the happier you are as a shipper, the happier we are as an organization because we're not having to reattempt deliveries, which lowers our operating costs, and the happier the consumer is because they get the product in hand. And it also results in less and fewer returns. If we in the past, if we had made 3 delivery attempts, and this is how many transportation companies still work, but because we have the access points, we don't have to worry about this really as much anymore. But if in the past, if 3 delivery attempts were made, we couldn't get in touch with the receiver, we will then hold your package for 5 business days in hopes that you will contact us because you will be notified. If you don't contact that carrier, they'll return the shipper. They will return the package to the shipper, which then results in a higher cost for the shipper because you have to pay for your return shipment, and obviously you didn't get the sale, right? And the point of you shipping is making a sale and growing your revenue. So access points reduce returns, which is huge. Next slide. Like access points that benefit UPS, you as the shipper, as well as the consumer, the same thing happens with UPS My Choice. UPS My Choice is unique to UPS. We're the only ones that offer this. What UPS My Choice does is it puts the control of that package into the receiver's hands. And what I mean by that is you download UPS My Choice from the App Store on your iPhone or your Android, and then it's an app on your phone, and they go through actually a very stringent process of legitimizing who you really are by asking you questions that you would actually be really surprised they ask and they know the answers to. And basically you'll have to, as a receiver, upload your credit card information. So the nice thing for you as a shipper is that if the receiver utilizes their UPS My Choice apps to, for instance, divert a package from their home address to grandma's address because I'm going to be there next week for whatever reason, that cost of diverting that shipment will not hit the shipper. It hits the receiver because that's something the receiver has requested. So again, the UPS My Choice app puts the power of the package into the receiver, not hitting you with any cost as the shipper, but hitting the receiver with those costs, but results in higher customer satisfaction because, again, they're getting what they want. That's what we see more and more in this marketplace, is the consumer is becoming more demanding. We have to find out ways to accommodate those needs and wants. UPS My Choice app will also help you with providing you a delivery window. So if you need a delivery window, it'll give you a 3-hour window of when that package is going to be delivered. For myself, I have it on my phone. So anytime Amazon's shipping to me, I receive automatic alerts. It keeps me very informed. And because everybody shops on Amazon these days, right? So I highly recommend the app. The app's free. There is a free version and a pay-to-play version, which has a couple more bells and whistles, but I would say majority of the people just download and take advantage of the free option. Next slide. Anytime, excuse me, you ship an international package, it's going to require a commercial invoice. Commercial invoice really provides a description of the goods that you're shipping to customs, so that customs can assess a duty and a tax to that commodity that's entering their country. Three things you always want to make sure that you remember when you're completed commercial invoice is what is it used for, and what is it made out of? If you can answer those three questions in the description of your commercial invoice, you will significantly reduce any holds by customs when you're trying to enter that foreign country. It's very important to remember. What UPS has done as an industry leader is they've taken the commercial invoice and made it paperless for you. And if you're not paperless on your commercial invoice, how that process typically looks is that you process your shipment going to Canada, and then 3 hard copies of commercial invoices will print out. You have to sign and date each copy, and then it's got to go into a pouch, which is a clear pouch on the outside of the side of your box. There are risks for that, and what we've seen through our industry analysis is that sometimes when that box package is in transit, that pouch can get ripped off the side of it, and that will result in a customs hold. What we don't want happening for your sake as a shipper, your consumer's sake, or our sake is customs holds, because that causes bottlenecks and delays to getting your product to your consumer. And so by taking it paperless, what we've done is when your typical label that you see on every package prints out, there will be a following label with a barcode. That barcode is now your commercial invoice. And so that when your driver comes and picks up that package from your business today to go to Canada, he will scan the shipping label, which is a typical label you see, and then he will also scan that barcode. And that barcode contains all the description of your goods, the value of your goods, the unit number of your goods in this package, so that when he or she scans that barcode, before your package even leaves Hawaii, Canadian Customs already knows what's coming their way. So that when your package hits Canadian Customs to be cleared and brokered, it'll be a smooth transaction and a smooth process. We'll get into UPS brokerage here shortly, but really this is, again, another no-cost value add that we can provide you to assist with a smooth transaction, significantly minimizing customs holds by taking your commercial invoices paperless. Next slide. So meeting your customers' needs. Here's some statistics on UPS's capabilities in Canada. I mean, UPS has been there for a long time. We've been there for approximately 42 years already. So we have a very strong network and global gateway businesses into Canada. As I had previously said, we do deliver to all 13 provinces. We have a very efficient network with local facilities that are all close to the border as well. And we have, when I worked with the military, we could move a helicopter or a letter. Whatever you want to move, we have a way of moving it for you. So just let us know what your needs and wants are, and then we'll find a way to do it for you. And we do have a full range of air and ground transportation solutions between the U.S. and Canada. With a little bit of a disclaimer there, our ground service to Canada is only out of the 48 states. We do not have a ground service to Canada out of Hawaii. It's only air services for obvious reasons. Next slide, please. This kind of lays it out, with a visual representation of what our footprint looks like in Canada. As I had stated earlier, with such a high amount of the population living within 100 miles of the U.S. border, you can see that we concentrate our vast network very much near the U.S.-Canadian border. We have 7 international airports that are served, 88 daily flight segments coming in and out of Canada, 56 UPS small parcel facilities. Those are your sorting facilities. 24 UPS supply chain solution facilities. UPS supply chain, again, is the air freight and ocean capabilities of UPS. We have 18 UPS freight facilities. By freight, that's your truckload and less than truckload facilities when we're going cross-border and keeping it on the ground. And then we have those UPS retail locations, which we had just talked about, which encompasses the UPS access points, the UPS stores, which also serve as access points, UPS drop boxes, and 40 customer centers that are typically located very close or within our sorting hubs. Next slide, please. Customs brokerage. UPS is a very heavy hitter when it comes to brokering packages. We have a comprehensive worldwide brokerage service network. We are the world's leading broker by numbers of entities processed annually and by number of dedicated brokerage employees. We're actually one of the world's largest customs brokers. We have more than 275 licensed brokers across the U.S., and we have routine clearance, which includes most international package delivery rates. And we do have a UPS broker of choice service that I can talk to you in detail with on a one-on-one basis. But with that said, we pride ourselves on the fact that UPS can clear 97% of packages within the same day of arrival. And that's related to, obviously, again, your benefit as a shipper, our benefit to reduce bottlenecks, and the benefit to the receiver to get that package in hand as quickly as possible. And we've been in the game of customs brokerage for over 80 years. So we have a significant track record, and we're proud of it. The next slide here kind of gives you why I included this slide is because it includes in major metropolitan areas of Canada and what our time in transit looks like. As you can see, a little disclaimer, this is from the 48 states. So what I would basically say to caution you is just add one more day time in transit to get the package from Oahu or Hawaii, I should say, to the mainland, and then it'll catch its next flight to Canada. But as you can see, we can basically get to all major metropolitan areas within 2 business days, which is very quick. But we do have a variety of options for you to choose from. Obviously, the quicker the time in transit, the more premium of a service it is. The longer the time in transit, the more affordable it is. But as you can see, we do have our worldwide expedited, which gets your product from the state of Hawaii to majority of places in Canada within 3 business days, which is quite quick, and that is our most affordable service out of Oahu and the outer islands. Again, UPS Standard to Canada is a ground service from the 48 states to Canada. That is even more affordable than expedited. So if you are working, for instance, with a vendor on the 48 states that fulfills your product, you can utilize that service to make a ground movement from any of the 48 states into Canada at even a more affordable rate versus any air services out of the state of Hawaii. But again, Canada is one of our most affordable lanes to go into internationally, and so even if it's in the air versus our ground service, it's still very affordable. Next slide, please. So export services to Canada, this is really just a couple of bullet points here we can talk about. It's very self-explanatory, but it kind of allows you to wrap your arms around some more of our capabilities. Our services there are listed first to the left. That's what we just reviewed. We also have one service that's not listed there, which is called UPS Critical. The reason why it's not listed there is because it's our white glove service, which is extremely expensive. In those cases, it's typically used in the healthcare industry or for very, very urgent needs. So much so that we will pay a UPS employee to hand carry your package onto a commercial flight and hand deliver it himself to that consumer to get it there as quickly as possible. It's on a next flight out service. So I just wanted to throw that out there. The military does utilize it, the government, as well as a lot of the healthcare industry for life-threatening reasons. But the next column we have there are billing options. When you're shipping a package, as a shipper, you have options. You don't always have to prepay your shipments with UPS as you do with other competitors of ours. You can pay for it prepaid, which is paying it for it yourself, where the shipper pays for it. You can bill it to the receiver, which is known as freight collect or bill receiver payment terms. And then you can do third party as well. So if you have, for instance, as I was mentioning earlier, a vendor on the 48 states, but you're managing your own website, but your vendor on the 48 states is doing fulfillment, that vendor on the 48 states will ship that package for you, but bill your account number third party in the state of Hawaii. And then you have the ability to pay for all the duties and taxes or the value-added tax and brokerage charges yourself. You can split it between you and the receiver, or you can push it all onto the receiver. You have options depending on how you want to build your business model. It's really a case-by-case scenario. We can work with you on ideas and why you would want to do certain things certain ways. Optional services, again, a lot of what we've talked about, the access points, UPS My Choice, Saturday delivery. We've vastly expanded our Saturday delivery network because, again, that's what we're finding that the consumer market wants. And that's what a lot of the competition is doing as well. And so we are pouring an immense amount of capital into expanding our delivery capabilities into Saturdays. UPS paperless invoice we spoke about. UPS returns, we have the most vast portfolio of 5 options for your return needs. UPS Trade Direct and World Ease are typically for larger shippers that help. UPS Trade Direct is where you would do a large freight movement with us into one of our facilities. We'll break down that freight movement. We'll pick, pack, and ship it into individual packages for you, put on the labels for you, and send it out to the destinations. World Ease is a way to do a multi-piece shipment over a cross-border, but it'll move across that border to customs as one shipment instead of, for instance, 10 separate packages, which helps with ease of processing the shipments and potentially minimizing any duties and taxes. We have dangerous goods and dry ice capabilities as well. That is definitely an area that UPS is looking to expand their network as well, moving hazmat, or also known as dangerous goods. We do again have our ocean freight and air freight capabilities that I've briefly talked to and mentioned about as well. Like, I specialize on the small parcel side of the business, which is your typical individual brown boxes. I do have additional partners, Susan, who specializes in UPS freight, and Carter, who's also spoken at these seminars in the past, who specializes in domestic and international ocean freight and air freight. On the next slide, really it's the benefits to Canada. UPS is a full-service logistics portfolio of products to capitalize on growth and expanding your sales. Our goal is to help you to get to international locations. Many of you are probably sitting here because you're realizing our domestic market is getting quite saturated. And even us as a transportation carrier realize that our domestic market is getting saturated with all the competition. So we're looking to go over borders and go international into other countries, just like you are, for the same reasons. We're looking to grow our business. And if we can grow your business, our business grows as well. As you saw as well, we have many small package delivery options into Canada, more than any other carrier. Can you hit the next slide? We have expertise, again, in handling all types of commodities, like I'd mentioned earlier, whether you're shipping simply a letter or an envelope of some legal documentation, or if you need me to move a helicopter, we can do it for you. And we have the partnership with U.S. Commercial Services. You heard from them earlier. We had John Holman is our local U.S. Commercial Services representative here. Blake's filling in for him right now. And I do reference many of my business clients to them. They do have a variety of programs to help you find a buyer for your commodity type in another country. I think it's called the Gold Key Matching Service, if I'm not mistaken. So really, we have the resources here. I'm here to support your needs. I am a local account manager here. And let's grow your business internationally. Let's make it a win-win. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. Thank you. Any questions? I'll stick around after the presentation as well to address any questions. If you would rather ask it one-on-one, that's totally fine with me. I do have business cards as well that I can provide you. So thank you. Yeah.
We have a question here.
Yeah, would it, and maybe this doesn't make any sense, but would it make any sense to kind of walk through what a typical set of documents and costs would be if you ship like a 60-pound agricultural package to Toronto?
Absolutely. Really, when it comes down to that, there's a criterion variables that always come into play, right? So it's the service level you're choosing, the dimensions of that package, the actual weight of that package, and the commodity type. So it's really on a case-by-case scenario. So if you would like me to work with you on your specifics, I'm happy to work with you on that, absolutely. Any other questions?
Are there any from the live streaming?
Yeah,
or
there are.
online?
There's a question that asks, products shipping from Hawaii to Canada, do they go directly to Canada or do they go to the U.S. first?
I'll go to the U.S. for a sort.
Okay.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Does anything go directly to Canada?
No, but honestly, we have such a vast air network that we can get it there in 2 business days anyway. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's as quick as it's going to get, really, based on our network.
Cool.
Any other
That's
questions?
it? Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Peter, thank you very, very much. Rob, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to say any closing comments?
Just thank you to all of our speakers. Thanks again to DBET for the grant that allows us to put on these seminars. Thanks to Tom Hansen for calling in from Calgary. I think that could be an invaluable resource for companies wanting to do something in Canada. Contact Tom, but we also have John Holman locally. And of course, people can contact us at HPEC for any help with that sort of thing as well. Thanks again to Blake for running the webinar today. Thanks to our attendees in person and online. Again, we'll have the video recording of this up on our YouTube channel and on the DBET website at invest.hawaii.gov in about a week, hopefully a bit less. And again, I hope everybody learned something today, opened your eyes a bit about Canada. I think that Canada is really an interesting market for Hawaii as I consult to companies and on marketing strategy. You've probably heard me, many of you in the audience heard me in the past talk about how Hawaii, the word Hawaii has so much goodwill in your marketing strategy. And Tom Hansen said that exactly, that companies shipping products to Canada from Hawaii have a leg up on the competition simply because it's from Hawaii. And our companies in Hawaii need to really play that up in their packaging and their marketing strategy, the made with aloha type of slogan. But with that, I'll leave it and I'll remind everybody we do have the Tokyo International Gift Show seminar coming up on June 28th. That will be discussing things all about TIGs, including sort of how to work in a booth and booth strategy and booth etiquette and business card exchanging etiquette and all of these kinds of things that sound trivial, but I think that they're extremely important. So please register for that. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. I'd also like to thank another person, Jericho. Would you really stand up? Without Jericho, we wouldn't have all of the refreshments and things. So, Rob, thank you. But Jericho, thank you so very, very much for what you do for all of these seminars. So, really, mahalo. And then another final comment. Jamie Lund from DBED would like to say something.
Just real briefly, because Rob mentioned that USADA, the Western U.S. Ag Trade Association, is having an inbound mission to Hawaii of retail buyers from 5 retail buyers from Canada coming in July 17th and 18th. I just got information. I contacted our Hawaii Department of Agriculture, who is the main point of contact. So if anyone is interested in that, registration is still open. You can see me afterwards because I'll forward you the link that they sent to me where you can go and register. But yeah, it's July 17th and 18th. It's going to be here at the Foreign Trade Zone. I don't know exactly which room, But it's going to be one-on-one meetings. You can schedule one-on-one meetings with the buyers. So see me after if you have, if you're interested in that.
Thank you, Jamie, very much. Again, thank you to all our partners. Thank you to our speakers. Thanks to Rob and to Tom and to Peter. We appreciate all of you coming. Blake, thank you so very much for handling the live streaming and doing that. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you all, both those in the room and those online, for attending. And we'll see you at the next seminar. Aloha.